Alright guys, welcome back. In this video we are going to be building a send target commands function. But before that, let's actually understand what we have done till now. So let's assume we are right now in our interactive prompt turtle shell and we have typed in list. Now what this will do is that it will show us a list of all the clients, that is the friends that are connected to our server. After that, we can select one of those computer by typing in the command select and then their ID. After this, it will show us a prompt which will give us their IP address. Let's assume their IP address is something like this, and we can just type in like dir or something, and we can basically access their computer remotely. Now in this video, we'll be focusing on writing the code for just this one line of function. Now if you remember, in the previous section, we also created a server.py file. And this server.py file that I've opened up on the side is actually the old server.py file. So if you go up, you can see that it is totally the previous one. Now this server.py file also had a send commands function. And this send commands function is not going to be a lot different than the new send commands function that we are going to be writing in our server.py file. Now because I've already written this piece of code in the previous section, I'm just going to copy and paste this in my new server.py file. But after pasting this, I'm going to explain once more what every line does. So even if you have forgotten what this code was supposed to do, I'm just going to revise it once again. Now if you don't have this old server.py file, you don't really need to worry about it, because you can just go to this link of github.com/bhat reverse-shell and then click on reverse shell version 1, and you'll find two files of client.py and server.py. You can just click on server.py file and then you can copy the code from over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my server.py file and I'm just going to create a new function. Actually, let me go to my start turtle function and let me just copy this from over here. And I'm going to create a new function. Let me just press def, paste this over here. And then let me go back to my old server.py. Actually, I'll also copy the comment because we are basically trying to do the same thing, that is send commands to a client. And then I'm just going to copy and paste this in my new server.py file. So let me just paste it over here. But one thing we are going to do is actually enclose all the code inside this while true statement inside a try and except code. So we haven't done this try and accept code in this old server.py, but we are going to do this in a new server.py file because our old server.py file is a little bit old and we want to make sure that our new server.py file doesn't have any kind of errors, and we want to cover every kind of cornerstone that we can cover. So we are just going to write try over here and I'm just going to press tab and then I'm going to write the accept code. Let's just write accept. Inside this, I'm just going to print out error sending commands. Alright, now let me discuss from the starting what we are actually doing in this piece of code, that is inside the send target commands function. So first thing is that we got this connection object from our start turtle function. So if we scroll up, as you can see, this send target commands sends us an connection object which we receive in our function. So that is the connection object. Then there is while true loop. Now what is the function of this loop? So this is going to run, for example, let's say we have connected to a client and then we have sent him some kind of a command. So for example, let's say, let me clear the screen, 7cls. So for example, we have sent something like echo hey and just press enter. Now after we execute this statement, it's going to come out of the client's shell. And we don't want that. What we want to do is, let's say we type in echo hey, then we should also be able to send another command, for example like dir or create a directory or delete a directory, something like that. And this is where this while true comes in. Then we use the try and accept code, and then we took an input using this input function and stored it in the cmd variable. Then we checked whether the cmd is equal to quit or not. If this is equal to quit, then we are actually going to remove these three lines and then just type in break. Now what this is going to do is that it's going to come out of this while true loop and is going to go back to the start turtle statement. And now you must be thinking that if this while equals to true is breaked, then we won't be able to connect to this client again. But that's not true, because there is an infinite loop in start turtle 2, which I forgot to write. So let me just write down in another infinite loop. I'm just going to write while equals true. And then I'm just going to select all of this, press tab, and that's pretty much it. So even if we break out of this send targets command loop, we are still going to exist in a loop of start turtle, and then we can use again list and select to send commands again. So let's go back to our code. And after this break statement, we are basically checking if the length of whatever we have entered is greater than 0 or not. So for example, in our CMD, if we just press enter, then the length won't be greater than 0. So we won't have to send any kind of information to the client. Now what is this encode? So if you remember, we talked about how when we are transferring data from one computer to another computer, you can't actually transfer data in the form of string. You have to transfer them in the form of bytes. So what this encode function does is it actually converts the string to bytes. Then we use the connection.send command to actually send data to the client. Now, whenever we send some data to the client, for example, echo hey, it's going to give us some kind of output back. For example, it gave us an output of hey back. And that kind of output is going to be stored in the client response variable. And then we'll just print the client response so that we know what is going on in a client's computer. Now, if there is some kind of error, it's going to go to this except piece of code. Now, you must be thinking, where will we actually get to this except piece of code? Let's say you are sending commands to the client or your friend, and suddenly he switches off his computer. So now you won't be able to send any kind of command to his computer, and that is where it is going to come to this except portion. Now what we need to do is actually put a break statement over here too. So for example, if he switches off his computer, we get out of the send target commands function and we go back to our start turtle function, that is start turtle function, and then we can type in list and we can see still which clients are connected to your server and haven't switched off or haven't got disconnected for some other reason. Now, the last thing we need to do is actually change the size of these chunks from 1024 to 20480. Now we are increasing the size of this chunk so that if any kind of huge data is coming back, we can just store it in client response. So for example, if we have typed in some kind of crazy command, or he has a lot of folders inside a folder, and if we type in something like dir, we should be able to receive huge amounts of data at once, and we will store it in the client response variable. So guys, this is pretty much it for this video. In this video, we have finally completed all the functions that were to be included in our second thread. So if you remember at the starting of this section, we talked about that there were two threads, the first thread and the second thread. Now the first thread went into creating a socket, binding the socket, and then accepting connections. And the second thread basically goes from starting this turtle and to all the way to sending commands to the target. Now that we have completed both the threads, in the next video we'll actually create the thread system and make sure that everything is working well together. So I'll see you in the next video.